Welcome back, drawing buddies. This week we're gonna draw the Wolverine. We're gonna go from pencils to inks to colors. So if that sounds like fun, let's draw. Wolverine, his first appearance is in The Incredible Hulk number 181. I believe that's 1974. But we're gonna do this whole video by memory, so hopefully I am right about this. Although his first appearance in the books and everything say 181, his real first appearance is in The Incredible Hulk number 180. I Will Die on That Hill. When I was a kid in the Marvel Universe handbooks and all that stuff, and anything you read that had Wolverine in it and it mentioned his first appearance, it always said his first appearance was The Incredible Hulk number 180. And now they call that a cameo. But the way I look at a cameo is the character's in shadow. He doesn't do much, doesn't say much, if anything at all. And just kind of hints that that character's about to show up. Incredible Hulk 180. It's a whole panel, just one panel. But it's a full body shot of him jumping at the screen. And he says something, I forgot what he says. But it's a full sentence. And they introduce him as the Wolverine. And then the next issue has the cooler cover, obviously, the red cover by Herb Trimpe of, the Hulk jumping at Wolverine. The Wendigo in the background is bright red. I mean, you don't get a better first appearance cover than that. But it's really his second appearance, not first full appearance. Same thing with Amazing Spider-Man, number 299. I would definitely call that Venom's first appearance, even more so than the Hulk 180 is Wolverine's first appearance. Because Venom's on like 3 pages. He starts out in shadow. He walks out the shadow. First he thinks he's Spider-Man. Then he's scaring the crap out of Mary Jane. And they show a full body shot on... they show his face and whatnot on the second page. Then the very last page, just a full picture of Venom. And he's speaking. So there's no way in heck you're going to tell me that's a cameo. I mean, you could. You're just not going to be right. At least not by any rules that I've ever read. But... Amazing Spider-Man 300 has that cool cover. Venom's not on that either. But he's there, and he, it has the red 300s all in the background and the classic Spidey swinging through the circle with the city behind it. But no Venom on the cover, so you can't use that as an excuse for calling that Venom's first appearance. But, yeah. Oh, and Gambit, his first appearance is X-Men Annual number 14, I think it is. He's on 8 pages. He speaks. He's all over that book. But, canonically, it takes place after what they call his first appearance. X-Men number 266? Is it 266? Yeah, it's 266. And, because, he's on the cover, and that's the story about him. And that one takes place before the annual. But, it was released after, so... The first appearance is when the book was released. Doesn't matter where it happens in canon, because then you get all kinds of crazy things like, Wolverine. His first appearance, he's fighting the Hulk in Canada. Was that the first thing he ever did in comics as far as, years ago? No, they show him in the 1800s. They show him in the, all right, enough of that. We're off of that horse. So yeah, this Wolverine, I want to be nice and dynamic and cool. I saw a picture of him in a similar pose. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. More of a painting and definitely more of an upshot and things, but I'm like, yeah, Wolverine, arms up, claws out, that's what we're drawing. So that's where I went with this one. And also, I think this might be the longest take I've ever done, which is kind of weird because my voice is still a little messed up. But I'm not coughing as much and I can get through sentences, so that's nice. And I think I sound normal at this point. I'm not all nasally and stuffed up, and so we're pretty much recovered at this point. So by the time I get to the Spider-Punk video next week, maybe I won't be coughing up a lung every 3 seconds. You can see here that I didn't go with the yellow and the blue costume, because my Wolverine was always in the brown and the yellow, brown and tan costume. When I started reading the books, that's what he was at. And that X-Men issue where he's taken over by the Brood, which I just got a copy of a couple weeks ago, a comic dealer that I buy stuff off of all the time. He had one in his boxes. I'm like, oh, that's the first book I ever bought. That's what got me into comics. And he's like, really? I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, just take it. And he actually gave it to me. So I'm like, cool. So now I have like 4 copies of that book. So thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. because I do love that book. I do love that cover. And Mark Silvestri may be the best Wolverine artist ever, even though you always hear me talking about Art Adams all the time. And here's the Frank Miller limited series from 1982. Mark Silvestri is the one who introduced me to Wolverine, so his Wolverine's always going to be a little extra awesome to me. And plus, he always remembered to draw Wolverine at 5'3", I think he is. Or maybe 5'5", whatever. He's short. Wolverine's a short dude. And you know, the Jim Lee comics, you couldn't really tell. Most modern comics can't really tell how short he is. But in those X-Men issues from the 80s that Mark Silvestri drew before Jim Lee took over, you could tell Wolverine was a little guy. He was always looking up at somebody or popping his claws up at somebody. I think for the most part, the Kuberts did a pretty good job of making him short, too. There's a Kubert panel where he's threatening the Juggernaut, and he's standing up on a bar stool to get up to his height. It's pretty funny. Okay, I'm going by memory here, but I'm pretty sure Wolverine got the brown costume when the X-Men were on the moon. I think it was the blue spot on the moon or whatever, where the Inhumans live, because I don't remember them wearing masks or anything. And Wolverine got in a fight, and his costume got destroyed. And some other character that they were fighting had a very similar outfit to his brown outfit. It was brown and the tan, and it was a full body suit, and it had like teeth around the neck and around the rim of it. I forgot the character's name. I'm not going to look it up either, because we're doing this one dry. And so Wolverine took that dude's costume and wore it. And then after that story's done, they get back to Earth, and he gets a new costume. He bases it off of that costume because he really liked it. Also, the 1982 Wolverine Limited Series that was written by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller and drawn by Frank Miller. I think it's argued who wrote most of it, but either way, doesn't matter. Those are the two that worked on it. He's wearing that costume, so all the iconic stuff that happened to Wolverine in the early parts of his career, we'll call it, he was in the brown costume. And when I started reading him, he was in the brown costume. And then I believe Jim Lee brought back the yellow costume. He liked it, so when he got his own X-Men series, he put him back in the yellow and blue. He didn't really modify it or anything. He just put the newer mask on it, and that was about it. And Todd McFarlane, he in his Spider-Man thing, he did a thing where Wolverine's out in the woods hunting a Wendigo because they think it's killing children. And Wolverine and Spider-Man bump into each other because Peter Parker's sent to work on the story by J. Jonah Jameson and whatever. And they're in the woods. And Wolverine goes primal, and he's out in the woods, and he rips his costume apart. And he, while he's looking for the Wendigo and all that stuff. And eventually he puts on the yellow and the blue costume because, I don't know, just because McFarlane wanted to draw the yellow and blue costume. So that's what he drew him in after he ripped the costume off. That's kind of a thing sometimes when artists or creators, they want to use an older costume. They sort of just think of a really lame excuse to do it, and they go with it. But McFarlane drew a really cool Wolverine, so I can't be mad about that at all. And that story goes to a really dark place, so we won't talk about it here, but it definitely shows that McFarlane was definitely more interested in horror than superhero stories and the situations. And he covers them a lot in Spawn and all that stuff afterwards. In fact, all his stories are a little dark. There's one with the Hobgoblin kidnapping a kid and disfigures half his face and stuff. And that's with Ghost Rider and Spider-Man, because McFarlane wanted to draw Ghost Rider. And he had a list of characters he couldn't use. So he picked the ones he really wanted to draw, because McFarlane drew a really awesome Ghost Rider, too. And going back to Frank Miller, you know, because he drew Wolverine mostly in his brown costume, but he did probably the most important Batman story ever. Whether you think it's the best one or not doesn't matter. But The Dark Knight Returns is basically what made Batman the most popular character on the planet. Before then, Superman was outselling him, and, you know, he was on the verge of cancellation a lot, actually. 60s, 70s. Right after the TV show, his popularity fell off again. But in the 60s, well, before, Batman used to have just a black bat on his chest, which they mostly put him in now. Yeah, it was from like the 40s up to the early 60s, I think. And for some reason, DC found out they couldn't trademark just the black bat. But they did find out they put a yellow circle around it they could. I think that's around the time of the TV show because, you know, all the merchandise related to it and everything. So they put a yellow bat around Batman's bat, yellow circle around Batman's bat symbol. So they were able to trademark it and merchandise it. And the yellow bat stayed forever. Well, not forever, for a very long time, well into the 80s. And in 1986, I believe The Dark Knight came out. Frank Miller didn't want to put the yellow circle on it. But the editors told him, you got to put the yellow circle on it. That's how Batman works, man. He's got the yellow bat now. That's how we make our money. We sell Batman t-shirts with yellow circles on it. So he reluctantly did it. And then I think it's the first issue. Might be the second, but I'm pretty sure it's the first. They bring back Two-Face because they think he's cured because they fixed his face. But really it was an emotional scar at this point, not just a physical scar. And he's on a rooftop, and he's crossing like a tightrope or something to get to where he's going. He actually has a rifle for some reason. I think he's using it to shoot down a plane or something. And somebody shoots him in the chest. And, he falls, catches himself, and then he spends the rest of the issue with a big hole in his chest, but it's armored. You can see his armor underneath it. And he mentions, why else would I wear a big yellow circle on my chest, to draw attention, because that's where he wants you to shoot him, because you shoot him in the face, Batman's all done. So, you don't see any symbol on him for the rest of that issue. And then the next issue, when he has a new costume, the yellow circle's gone, and never comes back. So Frank Miller kind of snuck his way around having the yellow circle around the black bat on the chest to just have the black bat. So, yeah, artists, when they want to draw a character a certain way, they find a way, even if they're not supposed to be doing it. So it's kind of cool when that happens and you notice it. I thought my voice was good, but the longer I talk, the more I start coughing. So there's going to be a lot of weird cuts in this one. But we are getting better finally. And the fact that it's freezing in here, I'm sure isn't helping, because if I turn the heat on, you could hear the air blowing through the microphone, so I got to shut it off. Lucky me, huh? It's going to be great when it's like minus 15 degrees out and I got to do a video. But for you, I will suffer. For the art, I will suffer. And we will get it done. Also, on this Wolverine, the pencils take a while. And it's mostly because it's probably the cleanest set of pencils I've done on this channel so far. Normally, my pencils are a mess. And when you see the Spider-Pug pencils, you're like, dang, he started inking that early. Because I just wanted to get to it because I was really having fun and I got the basics in. I'm like, yes, we're doing most of this in inks and it's going to be cool. And that's usually my attitude towards it. But for some reason, this Wolverine, there was details and stuff I wanted to add in, and I wanted them to look a certain way, and I wanted the blacks to go a certain way. So instead of just winging it with inks, I wanted to draw it in with the pencil, so I did. And I'm sure the drawing's actually better for it. It would have been different if I just went straight to the inks. But, was it better? I don't know. But I really liked the way it came out, and, had to draw all the hair on his arms and stuff, and his face, because, Wolverine's a hairy little dude, and we got all that done. Back to comics, I guess. Wolverine, after the whole Hulk thing, he was also in Hulk 182. I would call that a full appearance, too, even though it's only on the first page, A helicopter shows up and picks him up after he's done fighting with Wolverine. He's done fighting with the Hulk, and that's it. And that really could have been the end of Wolverine. You might not have ever seen him again, or he might have popped up in another Hulk comic in a couple years. But the X-Men were doing terrible. Nobody was reading the X-Men. And it was pretty much about to get canceled. In fact, they weren't even doing new X-Men stories anymore. They were doing reprints. And they were reprinting the older issues. Up to issue 93, I believe. And then they put out a giant-size annual, because they were doing giant-size annuals back then for a bunch of characters. And they decided to do an original one for the X-Men. And they figured, we should try something different. We should make a team that's kind of international. So we'll get characters from all over the world, and we'll throw them in this comic. And, maybe that'll give it a broader appeal, and it'll bring readers back, and people enjoy the X-Men again. So in Giant Size X-Men #1, they introduced the new International X-Men team. The other team goes on their way, except for, I think, Cyclops. The other characters are still around. Well, Beast and Iceman kind of vanished, but Jean Grey and Scott Summers stick around. And they introduce Colossus. He's from Russia. They introduce Nightcrawler. I believe he's from Germany. Storm's from Africa. I think Magic makes an appearance, but she's a baby, but she's not part of the team. But again, Russian. He's not. I don't think he's in the issue, but they have Starfire. He's from Japan. He's kind of a casual member of the team. They have, I think, Jonathan Proudstar. That's Thunderbolt. He dies in the next issue. Spoilers, he doesn't live very long. But eventually his brother shows up and takes over the mantle and X-Force and stuff. And then, of course, there's the Wolverine from Canada. And they picked him because he was from Canada. And they weren't really big on him. I don't think Chris Claremont liked Wolverine all that much. But then then John Byrne started drawing the book. And I believe John Byrne is Canadian. So he loved that Wolverine was Canadian and on the team. So he started pushing for more involvement of Wolverine in the stories. And, you know, Wolverine's a scrappy anti-hero. And he's a smartass. And he violent. And he'll rather kill you than figure out what the problem is. So readers kind of like that, because it was kind of new and refreshing and different at the time. You also learned a lot of stuff about Wolverine in those early X-Men issues. Not early, I mean, they were at issue 94 when it started, but those John Byrne, Chris Claremont X-Men issues, you learn that the claws aren't part of the glove, because originally they were. In fact, I don't think they retract them at all in the Hulk story. Him and Nightcrawler, I think, got captured, and they're hanging on a wall. And Nightcrawler's, great, we're stuck here. Although I don't know why Nightcrawler couldn't teleport. Maybe he couldn't use his powers or whatever. But the claws pop out. And he's like, oh my god, those things are part of you? He's like, yeah, what do you think they were? And he learned his name's Logan there. Even though, obviously, that's been retconned and changed. Even though he still uses the name Logan. That's what he prefers to be called. Yeah, so all that came from the John Byrne, Chris Claremont X-Men books. And they really developed the character of Wolverine. Because I think his first appearance was 1974. And he didn't get his own ongoing series until 1988. So what's that, 13 years later? I remember buying that off the shelf at a local comic shop. Not Richie's, unfortunately. There was three... Well, when that came out, there was 2 stores in Waterbury that I remember. There was Richie's, and then there was another one that wasn't very far from Richie's, and it was in downtown Waterbury in a less than nicer neighborhood. But they always had cool comics there, so I would sometimes go to Richie, sometimes go there. Although I definitely knew Richie better overall. And that store was just, if Richie didn't have it, or I just wanted to see if they had anything cool, I'd go to that other place. And that other place is where I got my first copy of Incredible Hulk number 181. I was there looking at books, and I think I found a Hulk 340 there, the second time Hulk and Wolverine meet, and it's drawn by Todd McFarlane, so you can't be mad about that. And that classic cover of the claws with the Hulk's reflection in it, that's been redone a million times, and they did a version of it in the Wolverine Deadpool movie that just came out. So I had that, and there were a couple boxes, just regular cardboard boxes, with some books in them underneath one of the tables, and they weren't bagged or boarded in anything. And I said, hey, what are these? And I said, those are some low-grade comics we took in and we haven't really gone through yet. I said, can I take a look at it? Like, yeah, go through it, and if you find anything you like, bring it up here, and we'll figure out what to do with it. So I put the box up on the counter, and I started looking through it, and it was either the last book or last couple books in the box. There it was, The Incredible Hulk, number 181. And it was rough. I mean, the cover was attached, but it had a lot of creases in it. It had the Marvel value stamp, so it was complete, but it wasn't in great condition. So I brought it up to the counter with the Hulk 340, and I think they charged me, $8 for the Hulk 340, because that's what it was worth back then. It was only out for a few months at that point. And then, or a couple years at that point. And then I asked how much for the 181. Like, oh, that was in there, huh? Like, yeah. It's like, oh, that's cool. Like, well, it's pretty rough, so I don't know. How about just give us $10 for it? So I'm like, sold. I'll pay $10 for that book all day long. Now, back then, Incredible Hulk 181 wasn't the many thousands of dollars it is now, even in rough shape. You know, I think a rough one will still cost you like $2,000 or $1,500 in that condition. But back then, at like Richie's or that comic store or any comic store you wandered into, they had their wall books. And a lot of stores still have wall books, or they have books in glass cases. And the wall books are where they put all the good stuff, you know, to show off that they had the cool issue. And you would always see a Hulk 181 up on the wall, or you'd see a giant size X-Men number 1 up on the wall, or a Spider-Man 129 First Punisher on the wall. All the stores always had them back then. And they were always $100. They weren't more, they weren't less. They were just always $100. And those were usually nicer copies on the wall, not the junk ones that were in boxes on the floor. So back then, key issues weren't all that expensive. Well, I mean, they were, back to me as a 12-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid, it was, might as well have been $1 million. But back then, the comics were affordable. In fact, I remember in the 90s, I want to say it was 92, 93 when I was graduating high school or close to it, around that time. They had all these different comic magazines, Comic Insider, Wizard, all that stuff. And I forgot which one it was, but the cover had a picture of a McFarlane Spider-Man swinging. And it says, Spider-Man finally breaks $1,000. And they were talking about Amazing Fantasy 15 and how at that time, a mint condition copy of Amazing Fantasy 15 was finally worth more than $1,000. I wish I bought every Amazing Fantasy number 15 out there when that happened, because I'd be comfortably retired now. But I also remember going to comic shows when I was even a little younger. They used to have them in like hotels, like the ballrooms of Hilton's and everything, and it was mostly just comic dealers, nothing else. And the bootleg anime guys who we've talked about in anime videos. And sometimes they have a comic artist. I remember Mike Zeck being at one. That's the only one I remember by name, but they always had a comic artist there. And I remember seeing dealers with like Batman #1 and Superman #1, and I want to say I saw Detective 27s, if not definitely early Detectives and early Action Comics. And they were never more than $400, $500, $600 at the most, which again, a lot of money. It's not like, oh my god, it's like buying a pack of gum. But when you think about what those books are worth now, 30 years later, 40 years later, it's like, geez, I wish I bought them all. I would have many millions of dollars in my pocket. Or I would have sold them when they were worth $1,000 because, I need to buy a car or fix a car or something. But would have been cool to own them. And back then, they were definitely obtainable. In fact, the guy Greg I talked about earlier, who gave me the Silvestri one, the book my first X-Men book, he was telling me when he was younger, he would buy all the key issues, and they weren't that much money, but he would just buy whichever ones they had and the cheaper ones. So, he didn't care about condition. He just wanted to have an Amazing Fantasy 15. In fact, I think he said he bought the one that he had or has or used to have. I don't know if he still has it. He paid like $20, $30 for it. And then somebody had a friend who would always spend a little bit more than books were worth to get the nicest copies he could find. So he would have like a super mint Amazing Fantasy 15 that he paid $100 for instead of $60 for. Or he would have, all those books. And I'm sure that guy's very happy he did that now, because Greg Tuxman's like, yeah, I wish I was that smart back then, but I didn't have a lot of money, and I was just glad I was able to get the book at all, which, most of us are, because most of the books I had that were like really cool first appearances, they were lower grades, they weren't higher grades. But I had them, so I'm happy to say that at one point I had a first Silver Surfer, at one point I had a giant size X-Men 1, I had a 3 Hulk 181s, I did have a 9.8 Spider-Man 300 though, so I had a really nice Venom one. I sold that to buy a drawing tablet. Go figure, drawing station. In fact, at the last show, I was sick, but I went anyway. I should have stayed home. I felt terrible. I spent the rest of the day in bed when I got back. But a guy who buys books off of Greg a lot came in. He had a couple books with him for some reason. I don't know why. And he's like, oh, you'll remember this one, Greg. And he pulls it out of his bag. It was Batman #4, I believe. I think it was #4. And it was graded, I want to say 6.5 or 7.5 as a CGC. And I think Greg sold it to him maybe for a couple $100 or traded for him, because, back when he sold to the guy, that's what it was worth. And man, it was cool getting to hold that book and look at it and be like, oh, someday I'll have something that cool again. The oldest Batman book I ever owned was Batman #23. I bought it actually less than 10 years ago. I got it at a comic show. The price was right, and it was actually in pretty good shape. I believe I sold it to fix my car or something, because it's my life. Something will break. I'm like, damn it, that's expensive. I don't have that much cash on me. So I'll sell a comic book, and that's how I pay for things. And eventually you run out of cool comic books to sell, and that's what happened there. So I will slowly rebuild one of these days, but right now I'm just having fun drawing the characters and talking about them on the YouTubes. fact, my ramblings here, I totally forgot to say, hey, we're doing the inks now. And one good thing about taking the time to do the pencils nice and clean is the inks go even quicker than normal because all the hard decisions are already made. All I gotta do is trace them over it. It's like they say, inkers are tracers, which isn't really true because if I just traced everything exactly as it is, it wouldn't be that cool. Although it might look a little more Daniel Warren Johnson, which would be awesome. But it wouldn't be on his level at all. It'd just be a little sketchier. But also, inkers add line weight and width to things and make things look like they fit in their environment a little better than us pencilers do sometimes. Because you watch my pencils, they're a flippin' mess most of the time. So it's nice to have clean pencils once to show you guys that I'm capable of actually doing it. Even though they're not super clean, they're cleaner than normal. So let's see, what else can we talk about on the Wolverine? He's had a few kids. Dakin, X-23 is a genetically engineered version of him, so DNA-wise, she's his kid, but, you know, he didn't actually impregnate anybody or she's born in a test tube. In fact, there's an issue of Wolverine that's considered her first appearance in a test tube. I think I have one of those. I don't know the number, but I think that's hilarious that they consider that a thing. Sabretooth is sort of arch nemesis. He first appeared in Iron Fist 14. I remember at one of those little shows I was talking about, you know, my father would bring me, and he brought my friend Scott with us too. And we were leaving, and I think I had like $10 left because, you know, I'd have like $20, $30 to spend, whatever. My uncle gave me money, my father gave me a couple dollars because, you know, I was a kid. And, you know, I might have to do some chores, I might not, depending on what needed to be done in the house. But anyway, so I had like $10 left after going to the show. And one of the booths by the door had 2 piles of comic books. And one of them was just a pile of Iron Fist 14s, first appearance Sabretooth. And one was Long Shot Limited Series number 1. And each stack said $5 each. Now, any smart kid would have bought 2 Iron Fists and been happy with that. But that Long Shot number 1 was something I've never seen before, and it was Art Adams, and the art was really intricate and a lot of line work. And oh, pause, we're gonna get this right. We're done inking Wolverine, and now it's time to color. Okay, so anyway, so there was 2 packs of books. Sorry, had to get that in there. And so I had $10 left, so I bought one of each. I bought one for Sabretooth, and I bought one Long Shot number 1, which meant I had to find the rest of the Long Shot Limited Series after that. But I'm pretty sure I found it at Richie's eventually. I said, hey, you got the rest of this? This is awesome. And he gave it to me. And a fun thing about the Long Shot Limited Series is it took a while to get that published because they couldn't find anybody who would ink it. Because all the little tiny lines and everybody and all the inkers are like, I ain't inking that. That's crazy. Screw that. Find somebody else. And the guy who ended up inking it was a man named Walt Portatio, who you might have heard of because he took over the X-Men after Jim Lee. And he also was one of the Image founders, well, right after the Image founders. I don't know if he was considered one or not. But he had the book called Wetworks. And he also did the Heroes Reborn Iron Man book. The art was excellent in that, even if the stories in those were terrible. And they had the Image guys come back and do the lower selling Marvel books. Jim Lee did the Fantastic Four. Rob Liefeld did the Avengers. And Iron Man was Walt Portatio. And it was pretty darn awesome. At least the art was. I don't remember how the story was compared to those other books. And also another thing, you know, sometimes I kind of get far along in the drawing and I said, I got to change this. This Wolverine's a good example of this because I get like all the way done with coloring and I think I even get done with the shading. I'm like, I think his face is a little too long. So, you know, I cut his mouth up, I move it up a little bit, I round his chin over a little bit, and completely unnecessary, but it bothered me enough that I had to change it. Well, here he is. Wolverine's in his classic colors already, and I love it. The brown and yellow suit is always my favorite. Sometimes I add like piping around things and a few more extra details, but this time I was just like, I am drawing Wolverine straight up brown suit because, come on, look at it. It's cool. And I decided I'm just going to put the moon behind him and, you know, Wolverine sort of howling at the moon kind of deal in his feral form, his berserker thing. And yeah, with the textures and certain layer modes, I think I get a really nice effect on the background too. And just, oh, I just love everything about this drawing. I was really happy when it was finished. Like, yes, this is cool. I might actually print out a big one and poster size somewhere and hang it on my wall. But I have this rule where I won't hang my own art on their wall because I think it's kind of pretentious. But then I see all these videos of people and they got their art everywhere, so I don't know. Maybe it's just me thinking too much about it. Oh, I also add gradients to him to, you know, add some variety to the color. You know, it's one of those things that's more subliminal than anything. It makes it cooler. You feel it, but you don't really see it. So that's the way I look at that, because it definitely makes a difference on the drawing, but you don't know why. It's just a subtle thing. So I definitely recommend it. In fact, usually I just kind of get a soft brush and I just add the gradients in a little spot somewhere, but this one I just pulled out the gradient tool and did a straight up gradient of his whole body. And apparently that works too. In fact, here's where I change his face. I'm like, I guess I should fix it because it bothers me. As you can see, it's not a huge difference. I just, you know, bring his chin up a fraction of an inch and move his mouth. And then we're done with that, but we don't really have to change much or recolor much, except for, you know, under his lip, which was a pain in the neck because of that gradient, because, you know, the upper part of his lip is a lighter color than the under part of his lip. So you got that problem if you decide to change something when you're using gradients to color. But I think it was worth it. Oh yeah, I brought up Sabretooth for a reason. Duh. Sabretooth, they tied it into his new origin with the James Howlett stuff in the 1800s and whatnot. But every year on Wolverine's birthday, Sabretooth pretty much murders whoever's close to Wolverine and does terrible things and haunts him. Like, he killed his wife one year, cut up his children another year, and wrote happy birthday with his body parts. It's kind of sad and disgusting. And I think the first time they met was in X-Men 211 or 212 in the, what was that? The Mutant Massacre storyline, that was it. That's the first time they showed them fight, but it was definitely, they knew each other and they were going at it. And it's one of those things, it's like, which character would you rather be that's left in a bad situation? Because Wolverine's haunted by Sabretooth all the time with, you know, the birthday thing and whatnot. Sabretooth's like a bigger, stronger version of Wolverine. The only reason Wolverine can actually hold his own is because the adamantium in his bones and everything makes him a little tougher. But Sabretooth usually wins the fights. Unless they change that. Wolverine wins more often than that now. I have no idea. In fact, I think Sabretooth might even have some adamantium in him now. I think at least his spine. They might have given him more at this point. I don't know. But then you got the Flash, who has Professor Zoom, Reverse Flash, who his whole point in life is to make Barry Allen's life miserable. You know, even going back in time and killing his mother and creating the Flash. That's how messed up that whole thing is. And then you got poor David. David's just a normal dude. And Thanos, for some reason, randomly picked him at his birth and said, I am going to torture this normal human on his birthday for his whole life. He's never going to lead a good, normal life. You know, he gets a girlfriend. Thanos takes his phone away and sends horrible texts to her. You know, he meets somebody else and Thanos will horribly murder him. And there's really nothing David could do because David is a normal person. And if he goes to the cops, they're going to be like, yeah, sure. Thanos, the Mad Titan, every year shows up to torture you. You know, you can't go to the Avengers because same thing. Who's going to believe that Thanos is taking a break from trying to conquer the universe or seduce Lady Death or destroy, you know, some planet somewhere for no good reason or fight Galactus just so he could torture this poor kid named David who lives on Earth. It's sad funny, you know. It's one of those things like, geez, it's kind of funny the way they treat it, but it's also like, oh, poor David. He has to live with this. So it's like, who has it worse? Barry Allen the Flash, Wolverine, or poor David? I would say poor David because he has no defense. He can't do anything to stop Thanos. You know, he just shows up. I think he even killed David's parents or something. It's just terrible and sad. And he makes this poor normal dude's life so miserable. But it also shows you how depraved and messed up Thanos is. That, you know, he'll take the time out of his busy schedule of being Mr. King of the supervillains to torture this one normal dude whenever he can. So sorry, David. In fact, I bet Thanos wouldn't even let David unalive himself. I bet he'd bring him back. I wonder if that's happened. I never read all the stories where he tortures David. It might only be 1 or 2 stories. But I wonder if he actually tried that to unalive himself. And Thanos like, nope, and snapped his fingers with the gauntlet or something, brought the poor kid back. Well, at least we're not David, right? Things could always get worse. You could have a mad titan torturing you your whole life. So here we're just adding on the shading and some highlights. And you can also see that the background has a lot of purple in it at the moment, which I actually kind of like. I probably should have left it there, but I just thought it was a little bit too much, because I decided to put the moonlight on Wolverine. Yeah, there you go. You just changed it to blue. But, you know, I had the highlights on Wolverine that are a little fuzzy and a little glowy, because they kind of needed to be. And, you know, that's how the moonlight goes. It's kind of a soft glow around him. I think that was the finishing touch that made it like, yeah, no, I totally dig this. Because I like them with just the regular shading, but this drawing's kind of dark. And, you know, you could, even though the colors are completely different, you got browns and yellows and the red belt, the values are sort of the same. So to make Wolverine pop a little more, he sort of needed that highlight. I mean, I probably could have got away with lightening the background or lightening Wolverine, but I was really happy with the colors and I don't want to mess with him too much. And plus, you know, he's standing in front of a giant glowing rock, the moon. So, of course, that's going to reflect light down on him. So we had to add that in. Although, in the drawing itself, I forgot to put the glowing on his claws. In fact, my son pointed it out. I showed him, like, how come the claws look like they're pasted on? And I'm looking at it, it's like, I don't know. It's like, oh, because they don't have the glow from the moon on them. So I don't know if I show myself adding that in, or if I just added it in and didn't record it and then tacked it on for the end of the drawing. But I did finally remember to do that, and it worked out kind of nice. Because then after I had the glow in here, I said, oh, I forgot to carry it down to his legs. So I just selected the color and picked a soft brush and kind of painted it in that way, which is probably how I should have done it to begin with, because it would have been quicker overall. But it works out, and the moonlight adds that finishing touch that Wolverine needed to complete himself. So what do you guys think? Should I print myself out a poster size one of these and frame it and hang it on a wall? I think it might happen. I just got to think of where I would put it. Maybe in this room here, because this is like my computer room / music room / thing. And while it's full of, you know, it's got a couple guitars in here, my keyboard and my computer and my monitors and a chair to sit in, it's, the walls are barren in here. This is one of the only rooms I didn't hang anything up in. Well, I actually have another art room with drawing stuff in it and my comic books. I didn't hang anything up on the walls in there either, because I paint things in there and I airbrush and dust gets everywhere. Yeah, maybe this room I'll start decorating it. Yeah, so here I'm trying all those filters. You know, I'm doing the blur layer, I do the chromatic aberration, I do the, what's the other one? The other one I can't think of the name of at the moment. And then when I get them all on there, I decide, you know what? Wolverine doesn't actually need those. I mean, I do keep the paper texture, but, you know, I decided he didn't need to have all those chromatic filters and the aberrations and the other one I can't think of the name of. So I actually kind of take them off after I go through all the trouble of making them. But that happens sometimes. You try something, you don't love it, it doesn't work. You move on and you try something else. Here I am adding a little signature, which shows you we're at the end, because Wolverine is done. So hit the like, subscribe, and all that other fun stuff, and hope to see you all next week with Spider-Punk. So have a great week, and go draw something.